So I wanted to quickly introduce myself and Favcy, which is the organization which is conducting the series. Uh, Favcy is a venture builder platform, and we co-build ventures with idea stage founders. So if you're an idea stage founder who's looking for a sort of like a tech partner who can help you co-build the product or digital platform with you, we're the right set of people. You can reach out to us. You can hit you can reach out to me directly, or there are various other colleagues of mine who are on the call itself, who you can directly reach out to. We'll be sharing an email ID for sure as well. If you guys want to pitch across to us, showcase what you're building, more than happy to run through the evaluation and get you onboarded onto our portfolio of companies. So now back to the most important thing. We have Srinivas Kollipara today. Srini sir, thank you for joining in with us today. For all the folks who I wanted to give a quick intro to Mr. Srini before I hand it over to him. Srini sir is the founder of T-Hub. T-Hub is possibly the best facility in terms of being an incubator. Runs one of the few of the best programs that I've seen in India. And Srini sir is the man behind that. He's also the president of Global Entrepreneurship Network. And he does a lot of things. I think he's one of the smartest man on when it comes down to building the startup ecosystem here in India itself. So over to you, Srini sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on here. And thanks to everyone for joining. It's a Friday afternoon. Not usually the optimal time. It's the time you want to be partying. Of course, in this COVID time, I suppose there's not really a lot you can do in that area. These are tough times that we're all going through. In some cases, tough because you've got more business in those fortunate few. In most cases, it's that the market has shrunk and you're wondering what you're going to do about it. What I would like to address, I'm one of those people that prefer talking to people than talking at people. So I'm going to try and keep my points short and then open it up for question and answers afterwards, where I'd love to hear from you guys what you would like to understand of building a startup from scratch or scaling a startup. So, just to talk about T-Hub itself, it's something that we built to build out an ecosystem. It was started 6 years ago when there wasn't really much of one outside of Bangalore. And the idea was at the heart of it all, in spite of the fact that we run the largest incubator, we run corporate innovation programs for guys like Boeing, Facebook, etc., and international market access. It really is about how do we help founders like you guys listening in to scale. At the end of the day, that is the mission, because having been an entrepreneur myself, I know it's an incredibly hard thing to do. Beyond the glamour that outsiders see of it, building a company is not easy. Every single part of it is difficult. I want to address just the essence of building a startup that can scale to its maximum potential. And I always start with two questions. Anyone that's worked with me or had a conversation knows those two questions. The first one is, what problem are you solving? And the second one is, who are you solving it for? Both of them together constitute the heart of your business. You have to understand the problem you are solving. I find that too many people go out and build solutions based on their own understanding of something and then realize that it's not really hitting the market. If you study the problem first, which means that you're also understanding how other people are solving that problem today, which may not even be with tech, only then can you create a solution that's differentiated and that adds value to your customer. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about for you. The other part of it is you have to be very, very clear. Who are you solving it for? It's too common. It's too common for me to hear the answer, we're solving it for everyone. Everyone needs the problem, the solution I'm pitching. The problem is that you have limited resources, whether it's in terms of people or manpower. You can't solve everybody's problem from day one. You may get there eventually, but who your early adopter is going to be and who you're going to focus on. If you study who that is as well, your customer demographic, and you study the problem, you've got the heart of a successful, scalable business. The other thing as a corollary is you have to know your customer in depth. Some of the things that you need to understand is what's their age group, what's their spending pattern, why are they interested in this problem, how willing are they to pay for it. Too many times I see startups building something because they did a customer survey and everybody that they asked said, yes, we want this problem. When it comes to payment, it's not happening. So you have to understand that part as well. At the end of the day, the very first thing that you do after you solve this part, when you understand the problem and who you're solving it for, is building a team. You have to build a team that is balanced. By that, I mean, it can't just be a group of engineers, right? It's got to be someone with business knowledge, someone with finance knowledge. You need to build out a business model. It's not just a product. And I'll speak more about that afterwards. So you absolutely need balanced founders that come from diverse backgrounds. And if you don't have them, sometimes, you are not able to find a founder in a specific domain, let's say marketing. Maybe you don't need that initially, but you better have a plan for getting that person on board fairly quickly. The other thing is that you want to be showing that you are the right team to solve this. Everybody that you hire needs to be on the same mission as you. Again, one of the cardinal mistakes that are made is a couple of founders who are very passionate about the problem they're solving and about their solution, but they hire people who, at the end of the day, are just looking for salary and they're not on the same mission. If you do that, you may do okay, but it's not going to get you to the scale that you could get to if you can enthuse everybody into the fact that this is a problem worth solving. And by the way, as a founder, that's one of the things that you have to be doing all the time. You need to be selling all the time. And I don't just mean selling to customers, I mean like the selling to potential employees, selling to future partners, etc. You've got to be selling what you're doing all the time. It means that you have to have your fundamentals clear and your elevator pitch ready to go. It's another area that, again, a lot of people have trouble articulating what they do. If you have to explain it in like 20 sentences, it's not going to work. Can you articulate exactly what you're up to very simply, very clearly, in a way that even your grandmother would understand? That takes effort. It means you have to keep iterating and saying what you do multiple times to multiple people, getting what they don't understand and refining that piece as well, right? At the end of the day, it is about continuously refining what you're doing. Ideally speaking, I would suggest you get a board of advisors very quickly, or at least an advisory panel of people who are experts in different areas functionally, as well as domain experts in the area that you're in. They are going to give you knowledge and insights that you probably won't get on your own. So absolutely go out and try and do that. Another thing that I keep telling people, I'm hoping that nobody on this call is going to make this mistake, but very often people are building solutions for markets that are very small. They're doing things that they know is easy. The problem is that if you're going to build something for small markets, you're probably not going to get investment, number one. Number two, you're sharp. You're out there to make a difference. Why would you choose something small? Pick a problem that is big. Pick a problem where the market size is large, so that it's worthy of your time. Be able to articulate what that size of market is, of course, as well. Again, too many people talk about a market size that's really big, and they based it on the fact that, for example, if you're in the food industry, right, you say number of people eating at a restaurant is X billion people, and therefore the market size is something. But you are not selling to everybody, and you're not selling to all markets. You're probably in a niche. Maybe you're selling just burgers. So the fast food part is what you're talking about. You have to look at your positioning in that market, and therefore, what is the population segment that can afford that or is attracted to that rather. And so you have to think about your market opportunity as well. You also have to think about growth. So today the market is a certain size. Hopefully it's not a static market. Hopefully it's going to grow, but do you know what that is and why that is? Do you know in which direction it can grow? Sometimes that gets influenced by adjacent markets. I'm not going to go into too much detail about all this right now, but I'd love to go into details if you want me to later. You also want to look at, why is today the right time to do this? Um, you obviously want to get into a market when it's growing. You don't want to get in too early. That's a mistake some people make. You don't want to get in too late. And very often it's external factors that are making that the right time. Are you aware of those? For example, I remember Uber, when we were talking to Travis, who founded Uber, talking about why was this the right time for Uber to take off? It wasn't the first shared service. It was actually the ubiquitousness of mobile phones and data connections, which had just come up. That's not something that Uber created, but they realized that all of a sudden you've got a class of consumer that has a phone in their hand with data that could avail of a service like that. So are you aware of trends that you're taking advantage of? If so, articulate that to people and figure out how do you leverage that to the maximum to make your market as big as possible. Um, when it comes to the solution itself that you're doing, are you clear about what your differentiation is between you and your competition? Are you even aware of your competition, right? You have to have a unique selling point. You also, or a competitive advantage. You also ideally want a moat. What I mean by a moat is something that stops somebody else from building exactly what you're building very, very easily. Like if you're going to develop a market and build a product that gets consumers excited, and then someone comes along and just copies it, what's the fun in that, right? You want to find out, is there a moat? And if so, how do I, again, take advantage of that? Moat sometimes could be, it could be a business model, which says that if I get the right number of people on board, there's a network effect to it. It could be IP. But are you focusing on what that is? And if so, how are you making sure, again, that you're leveraging that to the maximum? Um, so you want to make sure that you are differentiated from people. On the competition side, of course, too many people I know have not understood the competition in their area enough. They are aware of maybe one or two big companies that they know of. They don't know how many other startups are coming into that space, or even people abroad in different countries who could easily enter this market. You have to be aware of your competition for two reasons. One is that they could come in and, obviously dominate that market. But ideally, if you understand what the competition is doing, you'll also understand what feature sets you require and what could be different about your product to theirs. So you really want to be focused on what the competition is doing and understanding what that is. Ideally speaking, I mean, and one way to do that is also to track metrics, right? What is the competition doing? How much are they selling? What's the market size that they are claiming they have? Especially if one of them has raised funds, typically there'll be some numbers out there that you can leverage. Make sure you're aware of what the competition is doing always. And of course, why you're different from them. Another big, another big learning that I've had to teach my founders actually is, what is your business model? Your product is not your business model, right? Very often you hear people going, I have this great product. It's killer. No one else is doing it. Everyone's going to love it. I'm like, okay, but how are you going to sell it? How are you going to distribute it? What's your cost advantages? No idea. Your product is not your product. If you're a founder, your business model is your product. You'd better figure all of those pieces out. For those of you who haven't heard of it, I would highly recommend that you look up the business model canvas as a starting point. There are 9 segments in there that cover the entire range of activities that you want to address to look at the whole business model holistically. And you want to address each of those pieces. Ideally speaking, you want to do separate business models. Again, I'm not going to go into detail on this right now, but ideally you want to create separate business model canvases to address the different segments of the market that you could potentially address, because everything changes there. It's a way of figuring out which market do you want to go after as well. So that's another thing I would strongly recommend is the business model canvas. You want to look into, obviously, the pricing. Pricing is one of those black arts. It's easy to talk about. It's really hard to do. It's a whole subject in and of itself. You'd need an entire webinar series for that alone. But you want to look at pricing, right? And that comes out of it, understanding competition to a large extent, understanding the value to your customers, those sort of things as well. Um, I think if you've covered most of these ones, you have, if you can focus on all of these, be crystal clear about them all, um, be able to articulate them clearly to everybody else and be tracking them, you've started off way ahead of most of the competition. One of the other things that I must say is one of the differentiators between a successful company and one that is not successful is an attention to detail on metrics. Are you clear what the right growth metrics are that you should be tracking for you to scale? Too many people concentrate on what we call vanity metrics, right? So if you're an online company, it's the number of people that visited your website. Or if you're doing social media advertising, you know, the number of Facebook likes. That doesn't add any value to you as a business. You want to look at deeper things, right? You've got to look at customer retention. How many of your customers are actually sticking around and how many of them are disappearing? You want to look at growth in revenue numbers, of course. There's a whole bunch of things. So absolutely focus on the right metrics. Figure those out. Take your time to figure out what are those metrics, create a dashboard, and obsessively keep studying. Are they going up or down? What needs to change? If I'm making changes, which ones are the ones that make the biggest difference? Because again, your resources are limited, right? The last thing I want to talk about before I open up for questions, because like I said, I don't like generally talking at people. Funding. I know that's a topic of interest for many people, and the truth is that most people think that VCs are the way to go. That's the glamorous route. That's the one that's covered by the newspapers. You hear about the insane valuations. People get excited by those. It is not the only way. It is not even always the best way. Remember one thing, a venture capital fund is raising money from somebody else, has a limited horizon by which they need to return that money with interest and returns, and therefore will push you to grow potentially faster than you want to. Now, this is not the case with good VCs. I'm not saying that all VCs are like this, but you do want to be very, very careful. It is not the only way to grow. You want to look at what is it that you want. Now, this is outside of the purview of a typical funding conversation, but you want to look at yourself personally and say, what are your reasons for building the business? There is nothing wrong with building what they call, in quotes, a lifestyle company, which means that you're making money, you are living a comfortable life. It's never going to scale to a VC level and all of that. There is nothing wrong with that at all. You figure out what you want to do. If you are taking funding, and by the way, there are several amazing companies that have grown by bootstrapping alone. We have Lucid Charts. There's a whole bunch of these companies that have grown to very large companies without taking a dollar or a rupee of investment. It can be done. Just think before you take the VC money. If you are going to take money from an angel, a VC, a seed fund, think about who you're taking the money from. Capital itself is not the answer to whatever you're going through, right? Capital is necessary. But if you could get a strategic investor who understands your business to some extent, or at least values your knowledge in that space, but add strategic value in some way, that is the person you want to go with. You want someone who can either give you advice on scaling that you don't get yourself or you haven't known before, someone who has functional knowledge, deeper than anything you have, or you want someone who can open the right doors for you. It is very, very important to pick the right investor into your company. It's a make or break decision. I think that's the heart of what I want to say. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I'd love to hear some questions from you guys to direct, you know, the kind of things I talk about. If anyone has questions.
Perfect. So thank you so much for that, Srinivas. I think what I'll do is I'll open it up to questions. Just before we start, everyone, Piyush is being sending across a small set of messages. This is basically a link to a WhatsApp group where you can ask your questions, and you will come on the panel live over here. and you can ask your question directly. So using that methodology, Pranavdeep Kumar is the first person who asked the question. Pranavdeep, you're live. Please unmute yourself. I've allowed you to, come online to the panel itself, and you can ask your question directly. Pranavdeep? Hello, Pranavdeep? Okay.
I guess he's on mute.
Yeah, he's on mute right now. So we'll move on to the next question. The next question is, and we'll take Pranavdeep's question later, is by Saurav Raj. Saurav, I'm getting you online right now. You're online? Unmute yourself, Saurav, please.
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible now. Saurav.
Hello?
Yes.
Audible. Right. Thank you. It was a great session so far, and I'll get straight to the question. So recently we saw a lot of webinars coming through, and there's an explosion. My email inbox exploded a few weeks back.
Yeah.
So I started working on an application which is an aggregator of webinars. Now, so far it's good traction. It is coming. I see a lot of hits. But the question after these 2 weeks now is, can I develop, or is it viable business to develop this as a startup, where the next step is I can let people come into the platform, host their webinars, the payment happens. So it's sort of, you publicize it like a YouTube does, all the videos are there. You can host it via Zoom, GoToWebinar or some other providers which we can API integrate. And finally, have the payment service in all together. So you don't have to go to a ticketing service. So put these three together, create a business model out of it.
Saurav, we lost you for the last.
Go something along the lines of Meetup plus Bright Talk.
Saurav, we lost you for the last.
Something along the lines of.
Okay.
Saurav, hello.
I think I got the question anyway.
Is it still audible?
Saurav, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, so I got the question. So you're basically saying that you've developed an app that allows people to do webinars, bill for it, etc., all on one platform. You're wondering, should you turn it into a startup, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So look, it's the same thing that I was talking about earlier, right? I won't go into the particular business model itself, but what I'll tell you is, are you clear whose problem you're solving? Why are they going to come to your platform and pay you money? What's your revenue model? How big is that market, do you think? Only if you believe that it's a really big need. Now, as you said, webinars right now are exploding. Do you know if that's going to continue in the future? And how are you planning to capture the market? It is something that is relatively easy to do, right?
Saurav, I think that's a
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just think through those areas. What's your unique selling proposition going to be? I mean, in theory, people are promoting their webinars across Facebook, across LinkedIn, across all of those platforms already. So as a tool for getting discovered, it's not unique necessarily. It could be in theory. But again, you want to be crystal clear about the problem you're solving that is unique. And there's you want to find a group of people that are really passionate about this space. That if you go and pitch this to them, they go, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Here's my money, take it and go. If you can't find that, it's probably not worthwhile. It could be a good hobby, but I'm assuming you don't want to do this as a hobby.
It started as a hobby so far. It's just been 2 weeks. We got about 1,500 plus page views. So now is the question which I'm asking: should I turn it around, put money, resources behind this, or let it just continue as a hobby? That's the question.
So think through the business model. Like I said, look at the business model canvas and put in all of those pieces. What you can do is, because have you already built a platform right now?
It's there. It's already there. It exists. And what I do is, once the events are listed, I have subscriptions to many of those. I promote it through LinkedIn, the good ones. So, I cannot spam it because it doesn't look good. put it in the WhatsApp groups and put it on Twitter as well. So that's how I'm getting quite a bit of lead for now. I mean, page hits and visits
So
to the
one thing you
site.
could do is you could experiment with it. Given that you've already got the platform, you could build out the business model. It's already there. Play with it. You do a little bit of lean marketing, you know, a little bit of promotion with a little money, and see how much traction you get.
Right.
If you get the right set of traction, then you can turn it into a full startup.
Sure.
So Saurav,
I think that's
in fact,
very good advice.
yeah, in fact, I would want to come in here because there's a portfolio company that is there that we've does something similar to what you are doing, and I mean we've figured out a few things here and there itself with these guys. More than happy to get in touch with you regarding this.
Sure, wonderful. And I'll definitely look at the business Canva. That's the next thing which I'll do. I think that will give answers to all the questions.
Definitely.
So
Sure.
again, thank you so much, sir. And thank you,
You're
Nishthi.
most
Also.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Shini is with Aftab. Aftab, you're online.
Yes. Good evening, sir. My name is Aftab and I'm MBA student. I've been working on the financial parts of the startups and I developed the revenue sheets and all. My question is how much equity is ideal for the seed funding and how to manage the dilution of the equity in a further round of fundraising?
That's a simple sounding question that's actually fairly complex. It depends on many different things. There is no benchmark. The truth is that at an early stage of a company, it's more art than it is science. Obviously, you don't have revenues on which you can do discounted cash flow projections or any of the normal methods of valuation. There are guidelines on. I'm assuming you're talking about very early stage companies, right?
Yes.
So you have typical guidelines on what kind of investment you should be taking at what kind of an equity. And the guidelines are there because they assume that if the company is successful, there'll be multiple future rounds, which will dilute the founder more and more. And you want to make sure that the founder has enough equity left, skin in the game by the end of it, that they're still motivated to do it. For example, typically you would think that a first round of funding that could be anywhere from 25, 30 lakhs up to maybe 50, 60 lakhs. Normally you would talk 5 to 8% of equity. These are industry standard. Now there are people that are, go below that or above that. But those are typically things. But like I said, the truth is that there's no science to that number. It all depends on how much value the investor sees in that startup, the team potential, etc. Now, remember, at the end of the day, there are companies that started from scratch with huge valuations because the founders had success in previous companies. So, like I said, there's no good answer to that question, unfortunately.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Aftab.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for asking a question. Srini, I'll ask you a couple of questions because I get that pleasure and that privilege as a moderator itself. So I have a question for you, which is, I mean, I on a regular basis I find founders who have a very great product, a great founder market fit, right? So I mean, they've been working on that particular side of the market for a really long time, either with a really large enterprise, or they have had some sort of a self-employed background, which they've been running as like a sort of like a small, medium-sized business. Now, typically, they're the ones who want to really transform themselves and get into, say, the digital play, because which is something which they can work towards on a platform side, right? Now, there's no doubting the skills of the founder anymore. I think they're very capable as people. They understand the market. They understand everything really, really well. Now, out of all the things, how do you evaluate a founder who has such a great background? How do you evaluate his idea from that particular point onwards? Is it idea market fitment or a product market fitment is what we are looking towards?
Are you talking from an investment standpoint or?
From an investment standpoint, yes. I'm also talking from an entrepreneurial standpoint because see, typically these guys will be leaving the work that they're currently doing to start up something. So
Yes.
they're trying to figure out that mental model, whether this is something that they can really work along with and create a really large enterprise out of it.
Right. First of all, I'm not a big fan of single founder startups, to be honest, right? It can be done. It's hard, and it's hard both for the founder because all of the stress lays on his shoulders. It's hard to invest in because if anything happens to that one founder, the investment is gone. I would strongly suggest that you find a co-founder who complements your skills. So if you're an engineer, find a business partner. If you're a business guy, find an engineering partner. And that's one part of it is you absolutely need to look at, as I said earlier, the founding team. It can't be just the one founder. Now, if you're looking at a founding team, you want to make sure that each of those founders is playing a different role. It's differentiated, it's clear, and you trust each other. You're all on the same mission and vision. And you've talked through, here's another one that I always tell young founders or first-time founders. Be very, very careful with the contracts between the founders themselves. Quite often, founders are people who know each other. They were friends, they were relatives, whatever. And they go, I know him, so it's not such a big deal, we'll figure it out. That is the best way to kill your relationship. Do not do it. You have to talk through multiple scenarios. You have to figure out what happens if the company doesn't succeed in 6 months' time or a year's time, right? One of you wants to go back to work, the other two continue. You've left equity on the table for that person that's left. It leads to bad blood. You have to talk about what will happen in that scenario. On the flip side, what happens if, for example, you get an acquisition offer a year in, but it's a fairly low acquisition offer. Let's say it's 2 crores. One of the founders says, I'm done, I want to sell out. The others don't. Again, bad blood. You have to talk through these scenarios in advance and then codify all of that in your agreement. When it comes to your equity, obviously make sure that there's a vesting period for your equity. That means that over a period of 3 or 4 years, you only get a certain amount every single year. And so somebody leaves early, they only get a portion of that equity. That's a good way to negate that issue that comes up earlier. What other aspects were you looking at? Sorry.
Oh, so like when you were talking, in fact, I mean, you've answered my question in certain manners, right? So you're looking at more founders coming on. I mean, not a single founder situation. And I think from a market fitment is looking towards it.
Yeah. So you want to, if you've already got an idea and you validated it to some extent, right? I mean, obviously you don't quit your job unless you've done some validation of the market. I say this optimistically. I know that's not true. I do know people who have quit before validating fully. But when I say validation, I mean, you've spoken to, if you're in a consumer play, you must have spoken to at least 100 of your potential target customers. If it's a B2B, at least 10 decision makers in the business that you want to target as a business. You've spoken to them, you've totally understood what the problem is and how they're solving it currently and why what you are going to build is going to be different to them. You've got an indication of how much they're willing to pay for a solution were it to come up. You understand what the key features are because at the end of the day, there may be 100 features that you could build to solve a problem, but you only need to build 10 of them or 12 of them, in order to be able to sell it. And you understand that. Only when you've done all of that, should you be ready to quit your job and raise money. And by the way, another part of it is, can you convince somebody else to invest in you? The same way, can you convince somebody to join you as a founder? As I said earlier, you always got to be selling. If you can't sell your vision and the validation that you've done so far to anybody else, there is a chance that maybe that market is not big enough. Maybe it's not an idea worth solving.
Dude, are you saying that sales guys are possibly the best founders that could possibly be in a startup?
No, I am not saying that at all. Sales guys, I'm not going to go into that one actually. That's a tricky one to talk about salespeople.
It's all right.
But
I was just kidding around. Anyone can do it. I think sales is something which is very teachable across to anyone.
it should be, but the problem is a lot of people look at it distastefully.
Fair.
A lot of people, especially engineers or technical guys, are way more comfortable behind their computer than they are face to face with their customer. And if you're going to be a founder, you've got to get past that.
True that. I completely buy that, and I think that's one of the reasons why founder as a breed is something which not a lot of people get into also. Okay, so I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to ask Pranavdeep's question on his behalf because he's having troubles with the internet connection.
Sure.
So he's working on a startup in the FMCG sector, right? So he's asking, how do you pitch in this COVID time when most of the investors are seeking for revenue generating startups?
What stage is he at? Do you know?
I'm assuming that with this question, I think he's at a very early pre-revenue sort of a stage itself.
So pre-revenue, you're always going to struggle to get an institutional investor on board, right?
Yeah.
Unless you've got pedigree behind you. You've already had some success in a previous company, etc. It's why the first round, a lot of people have heard this before, but the first round is often called the FFF round, the friends, family, and fools round. You need to get those sort of people on board first, convince them to give you your money because they know you to some extent and they trust you, and at least have some, if not revenue and profit, you need to show growth. You need to show that your pitch for your product is validated by real customers, which means probably at least coming up with, in the FMCG space, at least coming up with at least a couple of batches of the product that you're making, giving that out to customers and finding out how much would they pay for it. If you haven't got your product out there yet, it's going to be very, very hard. You cannot raise money on an idea unless you've had previous success. And unfortunately, that is the truth.
So just to follow up, Srini, because he asked a very specific question when it comes down to COVID, right? So what are the sectors that you believe are going to shine through in a post-COVID world, right? So what are your takes on that? Because I just wanted to understand what trends do you believe are going to be, really picking up post the markets opening up.
I mean, look, there are the obvious ones, right? So if you're in healthcare and it's some way related to hygiene, to immunity, to mental well-being also, you're probably going to do fairly well. There's a lot of focus on those areas right now. If you are a company that is focused on SaaS solutions or anything online, whether it's online education or whatever, again, you're probably going to do really well. This has actually been a really good time for a lot of companies that were in that space. This is actually the COVID has been the kick that they needed to get them to the next level. So yeah,
you can see that.
Really want to look at, sorry?
You can see that with Zoom, right?
Actually, more than Zoom, I don't know if you guys have heard of a company called Notion.
Notion, yes, I have. I don't know the rest of the folks, but yeah.
So Notion is a company that is, I think they have 30 employees or 35 employees. They built a tool that replaces a whole bunch of other tools. It replaces Trello, it replaces Evernote, a whole bunch of stuff, right? And it's totally online. A lot of teams have adopted this. And the minute that COVID broke out, obviously a lot more people start to explore how do you keep employees on the same page when you are physically apart. They have consistently rejected investment. They finally gave in, took, I forget which VC it is, it's one of the leading ones. They finally agreed, right? In a market where everyone else is struggling for funding. They agreed to take $50 million of investment at $1 billion valuation. Wow. That is not something that would have happened before. But it's because, again, that in the post-COVID world, people are wondering, how do you keep people on the same page at work when they're physically apart? So yeah, there's a whole bunch of opportunities that open up because of that.
They came in at a $2 billion valuation. Index was the one. So I keep on following that company because I love the tool that they've created. I think it's a wiki, right? So at the base of it, it's a wiki that you get to create internally. In fact, I'm a subscriber over there as well. So I try to keep all the processes over there. Yeah.
Which one?
Notion.
Notion. Yeah.
Because it acts like an internal wiki for your organization also.
It's super powerful. It can do so many different things, but that's also it's also really complex. And so for a lot of people that just want a plug and play, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
But I love it.
Yeah. I have Ishan Rikhi. Srini, we're going to take 2 more questions,
Sure.
And then we're gonna end the session.
Sure.
Ishan, you're online now. You can ask your question. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hello, sir. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Ishan, and I'm the owner of Curated Dates. So I actually wanted to start something offline. This is my second startup. Earlier was a food aggregator business model. This is more like, this was an offline dating company wherein we thought that the dating scenarios in India were pretty messed up. They were either casual flings or they were apps that were getting you married. We thought, let's make something for genuine, authentic individuals and make a trustworthy platform for them to just come out and meet. We wanted to start that and COVID hit, so we pivoted into the line wherein we made them meet virtually. It's been 3 weeks. We are doing some great revenues in the beginning. So we made approximately 30,000 rupees in 3 weeks, which is, I think is okay. But the main thing is, again, I'm not one of your favorite founders. I'm a solo founder. What should be my approach right now? I have worked with hospitality industry for 6 years before doing my master's. I know the area well. I'm good with customers. I'm good with making the luxury affordable for many people, and that's what I want to do here as well. We've tied up with a few Taj hotels in Delhi for the post-COVID situation wherein we'll be going offline. Do you think right thing for me right now would be looking out for a strategic partner or an incubator or something that would probably be a great help? That's about it. Thank you.
Interesting space for sure. Look, I know I said I don't like single founder companies. It can be mitigated by just having a core team that you've brought on board. But the key is to bring in people that have the domain expertise in areas that are going to be critical to you, and ideally give them some kind of an equity stake to tie them in when you find the right people. All companies have a quota that they give to the initial set of people that join. In your case, because you are going to be addressing the online market as well, obviously you need a technical founder, a key technical person to manage the architecture of it and then the building out of the solution.
Absolutely.
You must do that, ideally, right? Sorry, what was the question beyond that?
My thing is, so basically we were into offline space itself because that was something that I had a lot of faith in because I could handle everything there.
Yeah.
But when we pivoted into the virtual dating scenarios wherein we are connecting them online, currently we are using a third party thing. So basically we either call them on a Zoom or something and we connect them. We do the background check and make sure that we've got the right set of people and we call them on a Zoom. So we use the third party. So I've asked someone to build the application for me who's already helping.
Okay.
But he's not on team currently. There's a third party again that's making it for me, like from my earlier startup.
Yeah, the problem with using third party anything, right? In the beginning as a startup, you outsource a lot of different things, from your digital marketing to your engineering possibly. The problem is that only you know what you want to build. They will build what they think is necessary. You ideally want someone on your team, even to work with an outsourced partner. Now that can be you. You could, upskill yourself and learn all of that, or you could bring someone on board. But you do need someone that understands the key parts. So in this case, technology. The space is absolutely interesting. Obviously, dating is a growth area. And online is absolutely growing.
We actually thought that in the very beginning when everyone was so distressed and people were just not happy with whatever was happening around, everyone was at home, we thought why not connect them, and we got a great response. So we were really happy to see that ourselves.
I've actually looked at that space before, and even recently. So I know what's going on in that space. A lot of the dating sites are doing incredibly well. Of course, it's dominated by Match.com and and a couple of the giant players, but there's absolutely space for more. The mixed model between the offline and the online is a great way to do it, I think, because at the end of the day, it is people do need to connect, and if you can help that process along as well, you'll do well, I think.
So, in fact, Ishan, we're a venture builder. In fact, we do the whole equity part, which Srini was talking about, where we actually bring on the expertise of building the tech and everything. And I mean, we try to partner with you on a strategic level, right? So, if you and I understand what we are building very clearly, I think that becomes like a important thing for us to also partner up with the right set of individuals. So we're more than happy to actually look at that, because fortunately, unfortunately, we don't have any dating company in our platform itself. So more than happy to have a look at it, because that's
That would be great, sir. We'll be getting back to you. I certainly sure.
And I must say that knowing a little about Favcy, they're a great option for you. They've actually built out the set of tools that you're going to need to test the market, to go to market, and the strategy to execute on that. So I honestly would recommend them highly.
I'm sure that will be a great help. I'll be looking forward to connecting with you, Nishchay, and
okay.
I'll get back to you with my pitch deck as well.
Sure, man. I mean, pleasure connecting with you over here on the panel itself. I hope we've answered your question.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, thank you.
Okay, we're going to take the last question. That's from Vignesh, and he had a very broad-based question, so I'll reserve it for the last one. Vignesh, you're online. Please unmute yourself, and you
Yeah.
have a very nice background, by the way, profile picture.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, sir. Good evening. This is Vignesh from Taurus. Yeah. So my question is that what is your personal advice on idea stage or POC stage hardware startups, which require a lot of capital for developing the product itself or a prototype itself? So what are all the best ways to raise funds for the same?
The best ways to raise funds. So, as you said, honestly, hardware is tough, especially in India, because it's capital intensive and because the risk is much higher, typically speaking. Can you say specifically what domain you're in within hardware?
So hardware, in sense, like we are working on indigenous powertrain technology for the electric vehicle OEMs.
Say that again.
We are working on electric powertrain systems, that is motors for electric vehicle OEMs in India.
Got it. So look, this is a question that has lots of ifs in it, right? If you have a team that has experience in that field, let me ask you the question directly instead. Does the team that you're working with have experience, credible experience?
Yes, sir. Yes, we do have.
That a large player would appreciate? If they looked at your team, would they say, wow, this is a great team?
Yes, sir, definitely. Yeah. So let me tell you, like we are one of the India's youngest startup to indigenously design and develop and deliver India's largest unmanned ground vehicle to the Indian defense. So we've already tapped on to the defense market. Okay.
So one of the things you could look at, if that's the case, is look at strategic investments from large players. Now, this is provided your IP is protected, of course.
Okay.
And of course, protecting your IP is expensive as well.
Yeah.
But if you've done, at least you filed for a patent and you have pending IP, one of the things you can do is definitely go to a strategic investor. That could be someone that is interested in using the drivetrain. It could be somebody that's in parts themselves. But that's a great way to do it for sure. Because again, if you can get a strategic investor in, then others are going to be more likely to give you credibility and invest as well.
Okay.
The other way is to raise enough funding for a prototype, potentially using grants. If you can pick an area that is strategically important to the country, there are grants available. So that's another way to do it, is to raise a grant, create a prototype, and again, get that prototype into the market with people that might be interested in it, and then raise the next round. it's always hard to raise money if you don't have working prototypes that are that you can show off.
Yeah, true, sir. Yeah, got it. So one more question is that, like, I would like to know what is the facilities that TUP offers for hardware startups like us who are in the idea stage, in terms of the grants and access to grants and all those things. Yeah.
Sure. So T-Hub, when it comes to hardware startups, T-Hub would not be the right place.
Okay.
There's an entity called T-Works,
Okay.
which is also in the state of Telangana. They built a makerspace already, and a much larger one is coming up. In fact, I think it's going to be, if I'm not wrong, 300,000 square feet or something. It's very large.
Wonderful. Okay.
Partnered with people like Samsung and a whole bunch of others. So there's going to be equipment that helps you manufacture your prototypes.
Okay.
They are tied up with both the Telangana government and the central government. So you'll get access to grants through them and credibility because you're at T-Works.
Oh, got it, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your...
Thank you, Vignesh, for your question. And that's about ends it. Srinivas, thank you so much for coming in. I mean, I can't thank you enough for coming in and taking out the time. I know you're really, really busy these days with your schedule and everything, but thank you so much for taking an hour out.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Before we end the session itself, I would want to thank all the partners which are there, which are involved with us in helping us organize this, helping us outreach to the wonderful founders which come out with some wonderful questions across for our speaker panelists on a regular basis. So I wanted to thank Amazon AWS, Circle Work, Head Start, Masterlife, Startup News, FYI, Network Capital, Startcom, and eChai. Along with that, I also would want to thank Easy to Pitch, who are the newest partner on board today. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time and for spending an hour with us on this Friday. So thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.